Okay. This portfolio is pretty interesting. It's got one hell of a mix. So AJ, environment artist from the Americas. It's got environment, some high poly stuff, a weapon, some substances it looks like, and two weapons. So right off the bat, looking at this, it looks like you're exploring stuff. Looks like you're trying to find you. Graffiti, what's up, man? How you doing? Hope your stream was good. Trying to find yourself is what it looks like. Like, do you want to be a weapons artist? Are you interested in doing texture, like substance procedural texturing? More weapon stuff, some high poly, just you're like super into the sculpting stuff. And then 3 environments. The other thing is I'm not sure if these are in, let's see what post order this is in. So this was a month ago, 5 months ago, 2 months ago. Okay, 6, 7. So they are, okay, they are getting, sorry, I'm like flicking through all this stuff. They are getting older. Okay. So we'll start with your older stuff and then move up from there. Dude, Speed Tree. Yeah, that is a different beast for sure. All right. So this is definitely an AK. So I'm not a weapons expert. I always say that every time I talk about, every time I start looking at people's weapons. I guess the only thing I would say is material-wise, it's breaking down pretty quick. Dude, this is awesome. So this is something you don't see with people showing their guns off. I would love to see a weapons portfolio where you can just, the gun is like there and they're just like, it's rotating, and then right at the end it like fires, but it's floating in the air. It just fires all in slow-mo, and you see like the shell come out, the casing. That'd be so sick. It's definitely, it's making it more alive, even though it's a still shot. Anywho, so let's, without going into too much detail, just make sure that your, because I'm not a weapons expert, but let's make sure that your materials are reading as the materials that they're supposed to be, as well as like making sure that your scratches make sense, making sure that the scratches don't look too stylized. Like the scratches down here are very procedural feeling. Making sure that the materials kind of have the proper roughness and like wear and tear that you expect. There's like a hard edge here that's kind of showing like maybe a technical limitation with how the maps are baked. Overall, there's also a pretty heavy noise or sharpening effect that's happening on the normal. So like the wood stock is really feeling it. It's like super crunchy. There's a bit of stretching here you should watch out for. Over sharpening your materials you got to be super careful about. But I think most of the problems here have to do with just technical execution combined with a really good roughness pass. And like and then I would say like the third would be your normals and like how strong, like if they go too strong, how intense that can get. Like this area looks pretty good. See, there's even some really interesting like storytelling wear going on. I'd love to see like the metal. I think it's oxidized. Emil agrees with having some animated elements. Dude, animating stuff is not easy, man. Hello, Alexander. I don't know what you're saying, but hello. What's up, Jordan? The only other thing I think I would say about this weapon is the wood grain on the butt of the gun is very straight. Maybe that's okay. I don't know. It feels off to me because of that. Like here, it feels all right because you're getting a little bit of a warp to the grain. And there's not really like I'm seeing like a dirt cloud or something that's happening over the surface. And on here, you're not seeing that. This actually is much stronger than this part of the same material, right? But yeah. The other thing is it looks like on the top here, the scratches are lifted and the scratches down here are inset. So your scratches are usually inset. I don't know of very many cases where they go the other way around. State of art presentation. That's really hard to do. Yeah, dude. So animating this, that's a whole other beast, right? I totally agree. It does take a lot of time. If all you're doing is weapons, though, it's really nice to be able to show that you can animate those. All right, so we got this this knife. This actually looks really good. I like the I don't know if that's being added in post or not, but that looks pretty cool. And there's a lot of there's wear on here that kind of makes more sense than the last piece. There's only two. I'm curious, like, I wish there was more images of this, I guess. Maybe just the way that it was unwrapped, or maybe like a breakdown of the materials. Like if you were to take this shot and then just slice it and then just show the maps as it goes up. Especially right here, I'd love to see what your roughness looks like. Pretty well executed though. There's story going on in the material, which is always something to go for. Oh, Ricky with the text drop. So Ricky says wear is very uniform. I agree. Shouldn't have as much height on it. Yep, you lower that. Makes it look really noisy. Textile density for FPS gun. The iron sights should be really crisp. Yeah, because you got to think about like if it's a first-person weapon versus third-person. Those are two different things. And the other thing too is Counter-Strike, for example. And I don't know if they're doing this in other games, but you have your first-person gun, but when your friend looks at you and you see him holding a gun, those are two different guns. I don't know if they still do that, but I remember when they used to. That might still be the case. It wouldn't surprise me. Because the first-person gun is going to be pretty expensive, right? It's all that detail. Sketchfab presentation? Not always. So Alexander is asking if I think that Sketchfab presentations is much better than just pictures. I think so, but there's also, you can overkill. Rasmus, dude, thanks for the sub, man. Thanks a lot, dude. You guys can drop the one or two emojis that I have. Thank you. Make sure if you guys are subbing and you join the Discord to connect your Twitch to your Discord so that you can get into the sub-only chat where I post dog pictures and photos of materials and textures. Blue Stamos is a Patreon. So let's look at these guys. Oh, the thing I was gonna say is Sketchfab's not always a good option, just because you can overdo it really quickly. Where it's like, why do I don't need to see this like nude pics? No, man, come on. You don't always need to see the 3D model, right? It's like that dagger might be a good case for it. But like dioramas are really cool to see in Sketchfab or in like a real-time viewer. So let's So this is pretty cool. Dude, it's really cool seeing people dip their toe into Substance Designer because you just see how people tackle stuff, and especially when it's their first couple, you get to see how they think about material and like what they view as being important. Dude, you even have Philip in here. Try not to use normal combine and metal map. Has to be a complete black. So that has a lot to do with why this looks so shiny. Yeah, metallic basically should just be black. That's awesome. He's dropping the knowledge. Yep, Bob's completely correct. You can get all of those great shots with nice composition as well. And post-process the shit out of that. Don't go too crazy. But yeah, Bob's pretty on the button about that one. On the nose. Yeah. Let's see here. So the other thing, I'm looking at these maps, I'm curious, I don't know. So down here, I guess this is telling me roughness, high AO, normal. That's interesting. You're displaying them in the reverse of what most people display them as. Most people display maybe like, so metallic wouldn't be in here, of course, right? Shouldn't be. But most people display base, normal, height, roughness, AO. Roughness and AO kind of go back and forth. Sketchfab's also, yes, pretty crazy about texture compression. So overall, I think this is looks like it was a pretty good exercise for you. I think this actually belongs probably in a blog for your portfolio. I always suggest that people have a blog as well, just because like a good artist is an artist who is always trying stuff, whether it be at home in their spare time or just at work, right? Because once you're full-time in the industry, it can get pretty difficult to practice your craft outside of work when you do it for 8 hours to 10 hours a day. So having a blog, you can just kind of go nuts. You can experiment on stuff. There's no commitment to finishing something. You're just trying stuff. Just post it in your blog. And then when it's like a final product or finish something, then you drop that in your portfolio. But yeah, this one I would definitely I would put in your blog if you had a blog. Holy maps. Okay, so this one is also, I think this one is also blog territory. I'm going to go through and name out a couple things really quickly that stick out. Okay, so this is your roughness, I take it, right? Because you're posting your roughness first. You have no albedo. That's interesting. Let's look at what it looks like. Sorry, my mouse is super loud. Well, there's like a seam here. So with seams, make sure when you're tiling, if you decide to offset something, there's a specific node for that. And my mind is blanking on that right now. So blogs is all social stuff? Nah, man, you could just, blogs are whatever you make them to be. Like, so if you go to my profile, let's go here. Oh, I don't even have my blog in here. Wow. Give me a second. All right, so here's my blog, which I haven't posted in a long time. Last time was March. But I just post images, sometimes text. What's more important is putting tags on them. And just dumping links, images, anything. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily need to be text. Okay, so let's get into this really fast. So I don't even need to use this right now. We're going to use a friendly color because I get enough red pens. Being in the industry, you get a lot of red pens where it's like, you need to change this. This looks weird. This is a thing. What did I just draw? Exactly. That's how work is sometimes. So you've got details that transition across materials. So you've got like this guy, right? This is its own material. The grout is its own material. Anything inside here should not bridge the gap. So you got to just make sure that you're doing an offset, like a warp offset of the grout on the inside. Everything should have a rhyme and a reason. So these look like they're actually made out of metal because of how clean the normal is. So making sure that you're breaking up those edges, chipping them up a bit, aging them a little bit, getting some height variation inside of the grout. Wear and tear as time goes on will cause the tiles to settle, in which case they will like kind of shift or bend. And then you end up getting some like slight angle adjustments on the tiles themselves. So that's pretty important to stress. And then when something is clean like this, make sure that let's say that this is the range, right? So this space, right now you're taking up this much space. That's not a lot of information for the normal map to work with. So you'll end up getting basically, let's say that's like 2-3 pixels, a 2 or 3 pixel normal shift because of how the normal map is telling it to do. Dude, this song though, hang on. This is not, I'm not feeling that. So when it comes to this range, you got to make sure that, this is why I always say bevel more. This is like increasing your bevel on a high poly. Is you need more pixel space for not only the bevel to be baked down for nice highlights, but it just, as you get further from the object, that bevel will shrink. So exaggerating your bevels is usually a good idea. So this edge being really tight is a little, it's too much of a sharp edge. And then I think that's what I don't even know. I'm not sure what that map is. The fourth one. What? Opacity? So there's a lot of maps in here you actually don't need. So you don't need your metallic map. These are dome panels. What am I thinking? So this is supposed to be metal. So you've got your metallic. Having a gray range, depending on how you feel about things. Yeah, this is portfolio review. How you doing, Axel? It's either white or black. It's either metal or it's not metal, right? There's a whole discussion on that happens in studios quite often, where it's like, well, what if it's metal and it's got a bunch of dirt on it? Then it's kind of gray, right? Well, the dirt is not metal. The metal is metal, right? So it's black and white. But as you get further away and it mips, you get gray. There shouldn't be a discussion. This is exactly Zoltan. Zoltan knows. Undead, how you doing, man? Anywho, this pattern breakup is like a cloud, so be careful with that. Presentation wise, make sure you've got a light that's more front facing. Zoltan's getting triggered, man. Zoltan. He did the hand. I know it. I can feel it. He did the symbol. All right, let's go on to this blade. So this blade is that's interesting, breaking that down like that. So these strips are I can tell they're overlapping, but they just aren't, they don't have a lot of depth to them. I'm not sure what the handle is made out of. And the metal is very, it's like how the orcs layer metal on in the Lord of the Rings universe, you know? So it's a little lumpy here. This edge is nice. I like this. Your roughness is pretty interesting. It's a wrapped metal handle. Yes. So this doesn't really come off as metal. I think it's because there's rust in there, so you're getting this weird range of metalness going on again. But then also the straps or the wrap. The wrap isn't really too thick. Let me, like, exaggerating the thickness of that will help with portraying the material a bit more, I think, or just adding some interest. Give me a second here. But like, you want to add that depth so that you can see how things are put together. I'm trying to find. Where are you? I'm not seeing it. Well, we've got some guns from the Division, and they've got really good, like, duct tape wrap. And that is, like, crazy, like, the detail. Like, you can see where there's imperfections. Like, this is perfectly wrapped. I'd love to see tension between, from wrap to wrap, like, where they overlap and they start to bend and push into each other. It also looks like you're missing out on some ambient occlusion to help separate those. And like when you hold it, you know, the oil from your hand over time is gonna like darken the sides of this where it contacts your hand the most. The other thing I'm noticing is you don't have as many maps in this one. As far as images, I mean. So I don't know how this is textured or how you decided to unwrap it. Especially once I see these, like this being broken down, I start wondering even more. Like, I don't understand, like, there's a lot of extra geometry that probably doesn't need to be there. Let me see here. So, like, for example, we're getting a little bit of curve. Oops, hang on here. So, what I'm seeing right now is this. So that silhouette, right? That's the silhouette we're seeing currently. Playing with silhouette is pretty good. I mean, it's good to do, but like it's also really particular. If you're never gonna see this handle, this is a huge waste of time. You know what I mean? If this weapon just falls on the ground and that's how you see it, and then you pick it up, then there's already more than enough detail here. But like paying attention to shapes and really pushing them, like that might be a bit extreme. So like dipping that one down, then going back up, and then this one comes up, goes back down. Like if you can play with your shapes a bit more and how they overlap over each other. Like I know that this tape under it sits there. Like totally show a seam there, like in the Like, let's see if we can. I'll move on after this. So just enough information to show that there's something happening under it. That's huge. We have not seen this portfolio before, as far as I remember. So going on to this one's pretty crazy. High poly work wise, it's cool. There's a ton of information that doesn't necessarily need to be there. Like from like a game production standpoint, I don't know how you plan to texture this or like unwrap it. Like do all the wires, are you going to bake those out? Normally I would say no, you just crease the normals on some tubes and you add them later. Your pipes are really squiggly. They're like really warpy. Maybe that's just a style though, but it's very strange. Like they're more tube-like and flimsy. Yeah, so you've got that problem. The base is really small, but then again, I don't have a sense of scale. And then the other thing I would add is it looks like you've used alphas to add the cracks and stuff. Usually I'm really careful with that because the alphas have noise in them that easily just becomes like this really noisy material, right? It gets all like speckly and crunchy looking. You got to be super careful with that because that's just going to bake out as noise, and then based on the resolution of the unwrap, it's just going to look crazier. So normally you just want to be interested in the cracks. This, nope. And then be careful with how these warp. Like when you melt them inward, like it looks melted more than chipped away or aged. The skeleton on the top, like the inner workings, is pretty intense as well. It's basically, it looks like it's a big sculpting exercise more so than like trying to keep it together in a style or a direction. If that makes sense. Looks like a ton of work though. I mean, these, I don't know if you laid those all out manually or. All right, we're there we go. Gotta switch the music. It's killing me. Yeah, baking ID maps on that would get you pretty far, but it's still like let's go back to it real quick. I'd model the pipes individually. Maybe bake the brackets, straighten these out so they don't do the little squiggly. Bake the brackets because those have details. Just put a tileable on the pipe. That same tileable, maybe a little bit darker, would go on the rebarb. The destroyed pattern that's happening on the brick or on the concrete on the inside here. I would bake a normal of that and this. And then use that as the main normal, but then tile a material on top of it so that you can maintain the resolution. This like tile work stuff would just be a tileable that I would map to some geometry that's on top of it and probably leave it at that. And all the rebarb would be modeled separately, maybe like 4-sided. You could probably do 4-sided pretty okay. But yeah. But yeah. So this scene's pretty cool. Immediately, I feel like the rug or this carpet feels really thin. These details look nice. Maybe it could use a little bit more depth. Maybe not. I don't know. It might get too noisy. I remember this for the Ancient Challenge. The Ancient Civilization Challenge. Nice addition to the candles to break the scene up some. Just kind of take this all in before I comment any further. This is cool. All right, so I'll point out the big ones and then we'll move on because we're out of time. So let me bring this over here. So these lines are relatively straight. This side looks better. Yeah, that's a little better. So the carpet feels really thin. It's got a really strange roughness to it. I think the carpet looks thin because of the way the normals are creasing. Some other stuff is like these edges are really clean or not very beveled. Your details tend to be really thin, so they become really sharp really quickly. Emil says, would you consider using tiling texture for the rebarb applied to a plane using alpha? It depends what the game is. If it's a first-person game, I would totally model it. Third person gets kind of questionable, like depending if it's like trying to be like really high detail and you use it a lot, then it could still be modeled, maybe three-sided. Cheaper games, and by cheaper I mean ones that are trying to not pay for all that geometry, totally a tileable rebarb would work. Applied to a cage, and then you're just kind of warping that cage around to get the look. But yeah, as you get further away, the rebarb being an alpha would really crunch down quick. That stuff will disappear. But depends how thick the rebarb is. It can be thick enough and still look okay as an alpha, but as it gets thicker, it justifies more and more that it should probably just be a geometry. So making sure that you're getting like even just an edge decal of normals to chip the edges and stuff to break all that up is really going to get you away from the look of geometry. That's the big thing that I think this scene is fighting. Where are we at here? Oh, I'm like drawing and stuff. There we go. So candles are a really nice touch. The ground feels really flat, and I'm curious as to how we could combat that. I mean, there's things you could do like trim patterns that are higher and lower. So like you could do stuff like this, right? And then everything inside of there gets dropped by like a brick height, whatever that is, maybe like that much or a little less than that. And then the brick pattern comes in. And then you've got this pattern that's basically solid all the way through. I mean, it keeps crossing over every once in a while. That could be, you could use, you could add some edge loops and then lift those or extrude them up just to break up the ground some more. And then trying to figure out a way to get the ground material to terminate into this object well is pretty important. Just because it just looks like it's placed, you know, on the ground. And then you have a similar problem where how these contact the surface. It's just empty. It's missing shadows or something, ambient occlusion. Like this is so bright, there should totally be shadows like casting across the ground from this railing. Grass looks pretty nice in this. This looks awesome. It's really nice, interesting material. Geometry is a little high up here, but you could argue that you have to add quite a bit to get that curve. Maybe not that much. Debatable. This is pretty detailed as well. The way you approach these, I think, is correct. Those might be a bit high poly, though. Like, you're paying for the geometry a lot in the base. Whoops. Let's see if I can... Whoa, that resolution. So you're paying for a lot of geometry in this base area here when this is super low. Like, totally add like one more loop in here, because when you see it in the other image, you can see that the normal maps are fighting with trying to make that round. So if you're going to be paying for all the geometry here, and especially up here, then you can totally afford it there as well. Where are we at here? Terminating these is pretty important. It's just extra geometry that's not really adding to the shape. So you've got this curve, right? These can probably just merge into one and then go down. Maybe those can even merge here and then go down. You just get rid of that. Something like that. Material looks pretty nice, though. It's interesting. There's a lot of interesting play. Oops. Let's keep going. Oh, wow. So that's all you're showing of the scene. So I was expecting to see some more breakdown, like maybe this guy separate, your trees separate, some of this stuff broken down. Roughness variation, I could use some more. Like this, like a range in the roughness could be more so. So painting each MIP level manually, sure. I mean, you could do that. But if you get close to it, it's just flat, right? It depends. I mean, I think what you're saying, Emil, would work. So I'm expecting more prop breakdown, and then the way that this bell looks, and then the way it looks in here is it's really losing the detail. Also, the inside of this is not very dark. I'm expecting more ambient occlusion. All right, so I remember looking at this one, and this one is pretty fucking awesome. There's quite a bit of detail in here. This is pretty cool to see the breakdown of some parts. This is also really cool to see. Yeah, Zoltan's right. It definitely depends on platform. Gonna be on mobile? Do it. Do alpha. Gonna be on console, claiming like AAA next gen, like all the badass shit. You're gonna try and pay for it. You're gonna try and pay for that geometry. First person for sure. Linear, definitely you would do it. Big, large open world, but AAA, you may model it, you may not. It depends on what the rest of the game is overall doing performance-wise. Yeah, exactly. Polygons definitely aren't our biggest performance hit on consoles and PC. So what I would say here is the water coming down here is really intense. I would expect it to maybe be coming down from this spot and this spot and maybe here. Like this. Meh. It's P. Overall though, this scene's really cool. It could use a different color, like the light coming in should fill this space with a slightly different color that fades into the distance of another color. Your roughness looks pretty good. Yeah, I mean, in general, this looks good. Just be careful about areas where it gets really dark. Adding more interesting play and color. So, looking at this portfolio, I would, if you want to be an environment artist, remove all the weapons. Remove your substances, just because they're showing your weaknesses right now. This high poly, I would put it in a blog. Like the stuff I'm saying remove, just put it in a blog. This scene's all right. You can keep that one in there. This one's much stronger, but needs more breakdowns. Like I want to see all the stuff in here. And then this one's your strongest piece for sure. This was a month ago. Kick out a few more like this and show the growth that you have had since starting down here. And you, sir, will be ready for some workage. But until then, I don't think this portfolio doesn't show me enough of you wanting to be an environment artist. So there you go. There it is. Vehicles. So weapons. Weapons isn't for environment artists, but what about vehicles? Vehicles are for vehicle artists. And that can cross over with weapons artists as well. Weapons and vehicles can kind of be the same depending on where you're at. But environment artists are environment artists. Like they strictly they're building the environment. Anywho, cool. All right, I'm going to be right back again. Do a little transition-y thing. Going to get some more water. And then we're going to go into your guys' critiques on the Discord, which I probably should have closed by now and did not. And it's probably flooded with a lot more stuff. Nope. All right, we're good. This is closed now. I'll see you guys in a little bit. Maybe like 1 minute.